Yo, what's up guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. Tensura. Melting the Eternal Frost by JackDaWeb Chapter 22, Surpassing One's Limits. Velzard's Pov. It's been a long time since I felt the thrill of battle. I've fought my younger siblings several times over the last few millennia, but none of them ever proved to be a challenge. To state it bluntly, Veldora and Velgrin need more time to grow stronger. They are improving, but the massive gap between me and them remains the same. As for Rimuru's case, my feelings on that matter are complicated. I recognize his immense potential, and he's already proven that by defeating my younger brother. However, there's a part of me that would rather die than cause him harm. I'm sure Rimuru would be a challenging fight for me, but that's a question I don't want answered. All this is to say that I rarely ever get pushed in battle. The last time I got serious in a fight was with my spars against Guy. It still puzzles me that a mere demon can match a true dragon in combat. I suppose that's why my elder brother entrusted him with the role of mediator. Just thinking about that again fills me with anger. Why did he, of all people, get his recognition? Was it because he was strong? Because he awakened his own ultimate skill rather than being gifted it? Or was it because he was foolhardy enough to challenge him? Just what did Veldanava see in him? I stuck around Guy for millennia since my brother asked me to look after him, but I had a different goal. I wanted to see just what it was that made Guy so special in my brother's eyes. For thousands of years, I kept a keen eye on his movements. He remained passive to world events, although he'd occasionally send demon attacks at human civilizations to halt their progress. When I asked him why he did that, he explained that it was to prevent them from growing too powerful and destroying themselves. Things stayed that way until one faithful day when the hero, Rudra, and his party arrived at our doorstep. Among their party was my little sister, Velgrind, and my eventual sister-in-law, Lucia. Guy fought the hero, leaving me with the rest of his party. At that time, I hadn't fought Velgrind yet, so I decided to have a little spar with her. Lucia mainly acted as support for both my sister and her brother, Rudra. Velgrind was good, but not enough to make me put effort into our battle. She was still far too young and inexperienced. On the contrary, Guy and Rudra had a fierce battle, which ended in a stalemate. I was genuinely surprised to see that a human was keeping up with someone capable of battling me to a draw. After that day, those two developed a sort of friendly rivalry with each other. Life remained the same until it became ugly when those two decided to turn the entire cardinal world into their little game. My sister, Velgrind, was in full support of Rudra's faction. Her affection for him clouded her mind, causing her to remain stagnant. I was appalled. Tensions between Guy and Rudra grew as their game went on. I'm not sure of it myself, but something was wrong with that hero. It's like he was slowly losing his mind the more time had passed. As for me, I wanted no part in that game of theirs. I continued doing my job, ensuring that Guy fulfilled his task as mediator. But to think his way of mediating would be a stupid game. In fact, he seemed more concerned with continuing his game with someone slowly losing their mind rather than fulfilling his duty. Just thinking about that boils me with anger. Notice. Master's emotions are leaking strongly. Desire fulfillment is now applicable. Would you like to use it? Yes, no. Pardon my inner outrage, Envy-san. I was only thinking about some red-haired bastard. But that is very intriguing. Desire fulfillment, huh? Under the right circumstances, Master's desires can be satisfied through their envious feelings. Foo, is that so? Then, my one desire is power. Thinking about that idiot for too long brought back some bitter feelings. I desire the power to give him a piece of my mind the next time I see him. I desire the power to end our millennia-long stalemate. I desire the power to overwhelm him without giving it my all. Understood, Master. Activating desire empowerment. In an instant, I felt all my strong emotions converting into energy, and my magicule count began rising. Something I've always been a bit insecure about was that Veldora was always superior to me in existence value. However, I estimated that our capacity had reached the same level. I didn't know what my skill was planning, but I knew it would greatly benefit me. Notice. Sufficient energy levels acquired. Commencing skill evolution. Wait, what? Petition to evolve the unique skill, Envy, to the voice of the world. Sacrificing energy in expense. Is this happening now? Just as I was enjoying having a higher existence value than my little brother. If I had to estimate, my EP probably reached around 90 million before the evolution started. Now, I felt my magicule dropping with each passing moment. Less than successful. Unique skill, Envy, has evolved into ultimate skill, Lord of Envy, Leviathan, greater than. Foo foo foo. Foo-ah-ha-ha-ha. Foo-ah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. You've really done it, huh? My EP probably dropped by around 15 million. But it was worth it. I managed to awaken an ultimate skill on my own. Once I'm done playing with Milam, I'll pay that damn demon a visit. Greetings, Master. I am Leviathan, the Lord of Envy. It is my pleasure to serve you and fulfill your every desire. Era, you sound a lot more fluent now, don't you? It is thanks to Master's strong desires and my evolution. Foo foo foo, just call me Velzard. As you wish, Velzard Sama. So, what's new with you? My analytical and computational capabilities have drastically improved. I have also gained several new sub-skills courtesy of my evolution. Here they are. All of creation, alteration, analytical appraisal, desire enhancement, the evolved version of desire empowerment. It allows the user to convert their envy into energy. If the user's desires are intense enough, then it is possible to double their power temporarily. Precise replication, the evolved version of imitate. It allows the user to create precise copies of abilities once they are analyzed. This skill is limited to abilities of the same caliber. If used on a higher level skill or ability, then a degenerate copy is made instead. Outcome manipulation, the evolved version of desire fulfillment. It allows the user to manipulate the outcome of an event with their strong desires. This skill is applicable up to 5 times in one day. Thought acceleration, I hope to be of good use to you, Velzard Sama. Foo foo foo, incredible, as expected from a deadly sin ultimate skill. I look forward to working with you, Leviathan San. Likewise, Velzard Sama. Now then, how's that analysis on Milam's attack? While replicating Stardust or Star King magic is proving difficult, it is now possible to devise effective countermeasures. Excellent work, Leviathan San. Thank you, Velzard Sama. Moving out of my thoughts, it appeared that little time had passed in my inner monologue and conversation with Leviathan. The effects of thought acceleration were new to me, especially now that it sped up my thinking tens of millions of times. Milam's incoming fist was moving rather slowly from my perspective. Activating reverse acceleration field. Interesting. I suppose that's one of the countermeasures you spoke of? Yes. It is an improved version of snow crystal, although it isn't exactly a barrier. In no way. By changing the parameters of deceleration, it is possible to reverse an opponent's vectors. Meaning, if a target were to attempt to move towards you, they would instead get sent in the opposite direction. The harder the opponent forces moving in their initial direction, the stronger the opposing force will be. I see. It's similar to my sister's acceleration, but with slight adjustments. Exactly. I watched as Milam's momentum halted before she went flying in the opposite direction. Her body forcefully crashed against the arena's barrier, making a loud noise that reverberated throughout the battlefield. She was unharmed, but the confusion on her face was clear as day. Foo foo foo. So this is a viable countermeasure for her attacks. It's likely almost impossible to dispel such destructive energy. Therefore, it is better to redirect it entirely. Leviathan is one crafty skill. Milam got up with an excited grin on her face, and I landed on the ground just a few meters ahead of her. Wahahaha. I don't know what you did, but that was extremely impressive, Auntie, Milam praised loudly. Era, is something the matter, Milam-chan? I asked playfully and her grin became more devilish. Not at all, Auntie. Let's play some more, she declared loudly and was about to rush at me. But to her surprise, her attempt to move forward only sent her back against the barrier. What is this? She asked confusedly while examining herself. I'm sure Milam will figure it out in no time. I stood patiently and waited for Milam to grasp her situation. Not only was my ability powerful, but it was also incredibly disorienting for my opponents. Eventually, Milam was able to move by changing her intended direction. By trying to move backward, she was now moving forward towards me. Foo foo foo, excellent work, Milam-chan. I praised earnestly and her grin grew wider. Such tricks won't work on me forever, Auntie, she proclaimed boldly. Then, no more tricks. Let us fight, fair and square, I urged firmly, and her eyes lit up in excitement. I abruptly disabled reverse acceleration field, sending Milam against the barrier. To no one's surprise, she recovered instantly. Wasting no time, she closed the gap between us in a flash. I dodged her fist by moving to the right before sending a powerful kick to Milam's side. Deciding to play around with my new abilities, I activated the countermeasure, sending Milam flying in the opposite direction of my kick. She managed to halt her motion and land on the ground safely. Wahahaha! Incredible! My turn, she declared loudly before charging up another powerful attack. Milam clasped her hands together, and her aura began flaring up violently. In the sky, dozens of glowing objects began manifesting out of thin air. They glowed a bright pink and blue and resembled the shape of meteors. After a few seconds, Milam thrust her hands in my direction. Drago meteor! She yelled powerfully. The dozens of glowing meteors began raining down, causing untold destruction on the battlefield. Reverse acceleration field couldn't redirect all the projectiles, so I had to rely on my snow crystal to absorb the few that bypassed it. Suddenly, I remembered the events of Walpurgis. Milam couldn't move in the suspended world then, but I wonder if that's changed. I'm sure she'll be able to figure it out faster than even Rimuru or Veldora after being exposed to it for a second time. Milam began rocketing towards me after the onslaught of meteors finished raining down. Quickly, I activated Time Stop. That trick won't work on me again, she stated loudly, and my eyes widened in utter shock. Milam was unaffected by Time Stop, and she continued barreling towards me at frightening speed. Once Milam was close enough, she threw a powerful punch that shattered through my barrier in an instant. I immediately held up my hand and caught her fist. The impact generated a powerful shockwave that bounced around the arena, shaking the barrier. I activated the countermeasure again, sending Milam away from me. Seeing that Time Stop was useless against her, I promptly lifted the suspended world. Milam quickly regained her footing, and we entered a momentary stare-down. We began walking around while keeping our gaze locked on each other. Her devilish grin remained as we circled the arena. I'm astounded by how fast she adapted to Time Stop, and I couldn't help but smile earnestly at her. Foo, very impressive, Milam-chan. You managed to move in Time Stop, I complimented her genuinely. Wahahaha. Of course. I felt that something was off during Walpurgis, so it was only a matter of time, she replied proudly. So she already perceived it then, huh? As expected of Veldanava's daughter. Her power is ridiculous, and it has the potential to grow even further. While she may have inherited his power, her usage is nowhere near as skillful as my elder brother's. But given enough time, she'll learn how to use it better and eventually reach his level. I decided to abandon all tricks and face Milam head-on, and it appears she feels the same way. We both assumed our stances before closing the gap between us in a flash. A powerful shockwave emanated from our contact point as our fists collided. Hand-to-hand combat was always something I rarely did since I relied on my skills and magic for most of my fights, but I was still proficient with it. On the other hand, Milam isn't exactly adept at hand-to-hand. Instead, she relies heavily on brute force, immense speed, and combat instincts. However, despite her lack of proficiency, she was still keeping up with me relatively well. We traded blows infused with magic, punches with enough power to destroy entire continents, and kicks that would obliterate anyone who wasn't a true dragon-level being. Wahahaha. How's this, Auntie Velzard? Milam asked loudly in between our ongoing clash. Amazing, Milam-chan. I haven't been pushed this much in such a long time, I yelled back, my grin wide as ever. I was so engrossed in our battle that I stopped paying attention to the world outside the barrier. Our fight flowed so naturally that if seen from a different perspective, it wouldn't appear as a clash between two gods. Instead, we would appear as two perfectly in sync states, flowing and bouncing off one another. The once powerful shockwaves we generated now felt like the morning breeze. I attacked, dodged, and parried as if it were as natural as breathing. I had entered the flow state for the first time in millennia. And the best thing about our battle is that there is absolutely no bad blood. I've no intention of seriously harming Milam, let alone killing her, and I'm positive she feels the same. Right now, We were just two people having the time of our lives and enjoying the thrill of battle. It's rare for beings like us to experience a thrill like this. Thus, I'd like to make the absolute most of it. Hit, dodge, parry, and repeat. The sounds of shockwaves became drowned out. It got so repetitive that my mind just ignored it. From our perspective, Milam and I were moving at decent speeds. But I'm sure those watching see nothing but blurs and hundreds of shockwaves bouncing inside the barrier each second. Rimaru's pav, what in the world is going on? Those two have seriously lost it, and to think they're still holding back. TCH, I'm glad the barrier is holding despite the intensity of their battle. Thanks to Veldora's energy, I should be able to keep the barrier up for a long time. But if things continue escalating, I might have to interfere and stop them before they destroy everything. Oh yeah, there's a pressing matter at hand. I couldn't tell what exactly it was, but earlier, I felt Velzard's energy suddenly rise and then quickly dip. Ever since that happened, her aura has changed. She exuded much more confidence and even started pressuring Milam. I was too busy maintaining the barrier to inquire Seal about the phenomenon. Seal, what happened earlier? It's quite troublesome, Rimaru-sama. Velzard has seemingly awakened an ultimate skill in the midst of battle. Oi! There's no way. That's just absurd, but I've never heard Seal sound this apprehensive before. Her tone is enough to tell me that she's being dead serious. While it sounds ridiculous, I should have expected that from the most powerful true dragon alive, awakening an ultimate skill should be a simple feat. There is good news, though. I've been analyzing Milam and Velzard's abilities since the start of the battle. Doing this, I made some incredible discoveries. Would you like to hear them? Ha ha ha. As expected of you, Seal. But before I hear them out, I'd like to know if this barrier can hold. Do not worry, Rimaru-sama. Unless they utilize turn null, destroying the barrier will be impossible. Alright. Let's hear it. The first new change is that you can use time stop. EHHH. Yes. While Azathoth has space-time domination, time stop was still inaccessible as it needed to be analyzed. I accomplished that during the brief window when Velzard used the ability. Amazing as always, Seal. Another thing, the analysis of Milam's abilities is now complete. While replicating it is proving to be difficult, here are the keynotes. Star King magic is the true dragon magic of Veldanava, which Milam inherited. Its essence is completeness, the opposite of imaginary collapse. This magic runs off a special substance known as stardust. It possesses many unique properties and boasts an incredibly destructive power, second only to turn null. While it is unknown how Milam generates this substance, and the true nature of Star King magic is yet to be understood, creating a similar magic is possible. To top it off, creating countermeasures for it will be trivial now that the ability has been analyzed. That's a lot to take in. So you're saying that I can now fight evenly with Milam? All things considered, yes. As for the Milam's magic, I've gathered enough information to create the ultimate skill, Lord of Stars, Velda. Wait. You can't just drop that so casually. And why is the name not complete? I would have expected it to follow the naming trend of the other true dragon skills. It is called such since it only allows the user to utilize star magic, a lesser form of Star King magic, that utilizes Star Ash. Star Ash? Star Ash is a synthetic version of Stardust that I devised. I see. What sub-skills does Velda have? The sub-skills of Velda are: Star Ash Nuclear Reactor. Allows the user to intake magicules from their surroundings and combine them with their own. This process results in the generation of Star Ash. Star Magic. A degenerated version of Star King magic, that still possesses the same abilities but to a weaker extent. While this skill is incredibly powerful, I recommend keeping it sealed in the skill storage. There may come a time when the skill can be modified and improved. I agree. Good call, Seal. Seal is absolutely terrifying. She recreated Veldanava's core abilities by analyzing them from his daughter. While the imitation isn't perfect, it's still impressive. But it's a good idea to have this skill sealed for now. Azathoth and Shub-Niggurath are already scary enough. Having Velda would be overkill. Back to the fight, Milam and Velzard continued their relentless attacks on each other. They were striking, defending, evading, repeating, and all at incomprehensible speeds. It looked less like a fight and more like a beautiful dance. Their movements were efficient and flowed naturally. I now realize what Veldora meant earlier. Those two are indeed holding back. There was no killing intent behind the attacks, no sense of urgency to evade. They weren't fighting. No, they were having a conversation through battle. We were looking at two gods having the time of their lives. If I had to guess, these two haven't had a fight that's pushed them this far. I was mesmerized by the beauty of their clash. Their fight was something I feared when it was initially proposed. Now, I couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of it. I'm sure Seal is having a wonderful time with all this goldmine of information. I could feel that even Veldora got hypnotized by the battle between his sister and niece. I could barely keep up with their movements. Streaks of blue and pink lights clashed inside the barrier. It went up as high as hundreds of meters in the air. Shockwaves powerful enough to destroy entire nations flew in all directions. Milam and Velzard's magic struggled for dominance, a beam clash here and there, a burst of energy that would cancel each other out. It was truly a beautiful sight. Their attacks further illuminated the day. I looked around the Colosseum to gauge everyone's reaction. The spectators were speechless, mouths agape while watching the battle between gods. Even if all they were seeing were blurs and shockwaves, they will never forget what they saw here. Less than holy shit. I thought our spar was epic, but this is something else, greater than. Yeah. Those two are incredible. Less than, and to think they're holding back, greater than. I'm glad we're on their good side. Less than I'm glad I fixed my bond with Velzard Nay. I've never seen her in her battle form since I could never push her that far, greater than. Hopefully, you don't ever push her into doing that. Less than kuahahaha. Don't worry about that. I would never dare make my sister mad again, greater than. Velzard's pav fufufu. Our spar hasn't lost momentum at all. This battle has been a lot of fun. However, I feel that we are nearing the climax. I suppose it's time I open up to Milam about my grievances in the past. Our fight flowed like a conversation. So why not have an actual conversation? With that, I halted my attacks on Milam before landing on the ground gracefully. Milam quickly followed and landed just a few meters ahead of me. She still maintained a cheerful and battle-ready expression, but now there was a hint of confusion. Auntie? Milam asked softly while tilting her head sideways. Before we continue, there's something I'd like to ask you, I uttered vaguely, causing her to look a bit concerned. What is it? She asked. I paused for what felt like an eternity. The question was on the tip of my tongue. However, I had trouble speaking it out loud. I took a deep breath and finally mustered the courage to ask my question. Do you resent me? I questioned firmly yet apprehensively at the same time. Milam appeared puzzled by my question. And why wouldn't she? The question came out so suddenly. On top of that, she was still a child back then who didn't understand much about the world. Eventually, Milam's usual demeanor returned before answering my question. No, why would I? I don't see a reason to, she said cheerfully. Seeing her blissful state and hearing her reply made the guilt feel worse. When you lost your parents, the death of my elder brother, I wasn't there. Do you not feel angry about that? About how I wasn't there for you? I asked solemnly while slowly approaching her. After hearing my words, her mood dropped slightly, and a small frown appeared on her face. I now stood in front of Milam just a meter or two away from her. While I looked at her somberly, she had trouble meeting my gaze. She looked as if she was reflecting on past events and the misfortune in her life. A few seconds later, she finally looked back at me with a small smile. Those things that happened, they weren't your fault, Auntie. You knew my father a lot longer than I did. I'm sure his death affected you just as much as it did me. Maybe even more, she replied earnestly, and I widened my eyes in surprise. But I was about to speak up, but she continued. I've always wanted to spend time with you. With Uncle Veldora, and with Auntie Velgrand. When I first got to fight Uncle Veldora, that was the most fun I've had since meeting with my bestie, Rimuru. And now, I'm getting that chance with you, Auntie Velzard, she said wholeheartedly, and I was left speechless. Are you really alright having me as your auntie, Milam-chan? I asked sheepishly, my voice sounding a lot more hoarse. Of course. After all, you're the strongest true dragon, she answered happily. Suddenly, I felt a familiar sensation on my cheek. It felt like a stream, a soft flow of water. I gently touched my face and immediately noticed the moisture. Am I crying? I moved my hand to my chest and felt the steady beat of my heart increasing slowly. I looked back at Milam and saw that she was crying as well. We remained in this state for a moment. I'm sure it was barely a second for observers, but it felt like minutes to us. Eventually, Milam quickly wiped away her tears, and her grin slowly returned to her face. She then assumed a stance, raising her fists. Wahahaha. Look, Auntie. You just made me cry. As compensation, let's continue our playtime until I'm satisfied, she stated loudly, now back to her cheerful self. I was very surprised by her sudden change in attitude, but I'm glad it turned out like this. Answering her request, I wiped away my tears and assumed a fighting stance of my own. My heart began beating faster, only this time, it was out of excitement. I felt my cheeks curl up as my grin came back while I faced off against Milam. Foo. You really are one of a kind, Milam-chan. Very well. I will play with you for as long as you want, I affirmed strongly with a confident smile. Milam's eyes lit up out of pure happiness. That's more like it, she yelled excitedly. Now then, let's play, shall we?